It's 12:05, so maybe we should.
Yeah, I think we can begin. We have 61 people here joined us. Amazing. And Rafi, take the stage. It's yours.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jan. Very, very nice to see everybody here. I see a lot of our partners here, some that I work with, the guys from all different kinds of places. So very, very happy to see everybody here. I'll tell you right now, the purpose of this webinar is because we have so many partners and not everybody knows exactly how to position accessiBe. Not everybody knows exactly how to talk about people with disabilities, about how accessibility is important, about a wide range of topics. So we're going to cover that. I am Rafi Glantz, by the way. I do partner success here. I am very, very, very lucky to be one of the first employees here. So I've seen an incredible amount of changes at accessiBe. And we're expanding the partner success team because we recognized that we have a very wide pool of partners and they need a lot of different people to help them and support them. So we have Hobie and Mike here, and I'll let them introduce themselves, of course. So Hobie, if you want to take the floor.
Well, Rafi, thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here. My name is Hobie Wedler, totally blind, and ended up earning my PhD in organic chemistry in 2016. It took getting a PhD to realize that maybe I didn't want to study chemistry as my full-time career. I still love chemistry and I still practice it on a daily basis for my clients and with my clients. I think that once a chemist, always a chemist, but now I'm an entrepreneur and doing a lot of work in both the creative space, which is more the hat that I'm going to wear today, and also the food and beverage space. So I've trained my palate and really refined it. I think of it kind of like learning to play the guitar. It takes a lot of practice. You're not born with a good palate. You really have to train it. And I do a lot of work using my nose and an ability to taste things for clients. That's my consulting. I've got a beverage company that just got funded about a week ago. So we're interested in launching that. It's called Blind Truth Beverage. And I'm also launching a line of gourmet seasonings next week called Hobie's. Really excited about that. My goal as an entrepreneur is just to elevate people's happiness while solving important problems. People often hear the term entrepreneur and they think, oh, you're about money and power, and that couldn't be further from the truth. Really, if I'm able to pay my bills at the end of the month, I'm a happy camper, and I just like to solve problems in a real world way. And I think being blind in a sighted world is really a lot like being an entrepreneur in any world where you're out here solving problems. And I think I share that entrepreneurial spirit in common with the accessiBe team. Today, the hat that I'm going to be wearing is the hat of SensePoint. I am a founding partner actually at SensePoint, which is a creative and marketing studio doing a lot of web development, among other things. And so we are proud to be partnered with accessiBe as an agency, but I am lucky enough to sit in both stools as both a partner and a very happy user of the technology.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that intro, Hobie. Mike, if you want to introduce yourself quickly, we'll get started right after you.
So I am Michael Hinkson. I am the Chief Vision Officer for accessiBe. I joined the company earlier this year and I'm really thrilled to be able to meet a number of you who are partners. I want you to reach out to me at any time if I can be of assistance or help you in any way. My background is I've been blind my entire life. My adult background primarily has been in sales. I have a master's degree in physics from the University of California at Irvine. And I started off thinking I was going to be more in a science-oriented environment, but like Hobie, went different directions for a lot of reasons, but nevertheless did, and have been successful at it and learned that blindness isn't really the issue, that in reality, we can do whatever we choose to do with our lives. And for me, I've been pretty visible in the world because of a little thing that happened now almost 20 years ago. I ran the Mid-Atlantic region for a high-tech computer company, Quantum Corporation. We were on the 78th floor of Tower 1 on September 11th when the terrorists attacked the towers. I escaped and became very visible in the media and began a public speaking career after that. Hey, sales gives you the ability, if you work at it, to be a decent speaker. long story there, but nevertheless, I've been a public speaker for the past 20 years. And last October, I discovered accessiBe, and through circumstances started working with folks and became the chief vision officer to help with providing direction and providing abilities to teach people more about disabilities and help all of you become better partners in any way that I can. And so we'll make sure that you have my contact information. If you ever need someone to come and give a talk to inspire people, or you need somebody to come and talk about accessiBe, also essentially from a sales and partner standpoint, glad to do it anytime that you wish. And so I will definitely put my information up so that all of you can get it. But I'm really excited to be here and looking forward to working with you. Hearing Toby, we'll see if Hobie can talk about chemistry a little bit. You know, he can say H2O or something like that.
That's right.
Well,
Yeah.
thanks so much, Mike.
And I can turn H2O into heavy water and we can make a bomb, but you know, that's okay.
Whoa, guys, I am a college dropout. You're making me feel very inadequate with all your degrees.
Come on, work at that. Come on, you can do fine.
I'll get one eventually. All right. Well, thanks so much, Mike. We're thrilled to have you here as well. Hobie, let's get started with some questions.
Sure.
Let's start off with an easy one.
If you don't mind, actually, before we jump in, I just want to say that if anyone wants to reach out to me or contact me and I can be of assistance to you, either from the agency standpoint or from my personal standpoint, just by all means, let me know and be sure to extend my contact info out there. And Mike, you're a physicist, so I have a quick question for you. You know why steak is so much more energetic than hamburger?
Oh no, why?
Well, hamburger's in the ground state. I had to do it.
I get, well, you know why radio announcers have small hands, don't you?
What is that?
We pause for station identification.
Ooh, okay.
Bye.
Anyway, sorry. Stop us while we're ahead, Rafi.
Okay. I'll give you an easier question than that. What are the main reasons to be accessible, Hobie?
Oh man, well, that might be a deceptively easy question, but it's one that has many answers, and it's very straightforward. But there's so many reasons to be accessible. If we're accessible, I can't think about the term accessibility without thinking about the terms inclusivity, really diversity. And if we're accessible, we're ideally making our products more inclusive of more users, more people. And I think a lot of times when we think about accessibility, we make the mistake of thinking only people with screen readers who are blind, who need to navigate websites. And we think, oh, that's a small population. You know, I don't really need to make my website accessible to them. And I think what we often don't think about is the much larger group that we're helping: people with epilepsy, people with hearing disabilities, anything of the sort that we might be helping, someone with a learning disability, someone with dyslexia. Accessibility and thinking about accessibility can help so many people so much. And if we think too about the growing senior market within the United States of America, and by that I mean folks 65 years of age and older, you know, eyesight tends to go, fine motor skills tend to go, you know, away after a point in time. So it's like, why don't we just think about making the world a more accessible place for all of us, and accommodating and meeting our customers where they are in terms of really and helping them. So I think as partners, you know, we have kind of a duty, right? As agencies and as partners of accessiBe, we have a due diligence to perform, which is really oftentimes explaining to our clients the true importance of accessibility and how many people we're impacting when we make a website or anything that we do for our clients accessible. I think that really is our due diligence, because we can't expect every one of our clients to understand it as deeply as we do. But if we can teach our clients and explain to them what we mean by accessibility and what the importance is of making anything we do for them accessible, we're winning. And you know what we're doing is we're helping them win more business, and we're helping them create a brand that works even harder than it did before.
100%. And you know what? To add on to that real quick, and I know that's not my role here, but I just have to. We actually just saw this study that came out said over 90% of business owners expect their agency to not only bring this to their attention, but to take care of it as well. So it's
Yeah.
super, super important, and it sets you apart as an agency because less than 2% of websites are accessible, which is just an embarrassment right now. Now,
The other thing
Toby,
that's also very
yeah,
important to know is that there have been studies, for example, Nielsen did a study that also says that people with disabilities are extremely brand loyal where they can interact with websites.
Yeah.
The reality is that we are that way because so many times we can't access a website, but suddenly when we find something that we can interact with, we're going to be very loyal to that brand because clearly they've taken an interest in us.
And again, that's a
absolutely.
large group to market to. And Mike, you and I, from experience, I know we've talked about this before. I have brands that I'm very loyal to, not even ones that may not have the cheapest or the best products, but ones that take the initiative and care deeply about accessibility.
20% of all people have a disability, so it's relevant, absolutely relevant. Wouldn't you like to
Yeah.
help people increase their businesses by 20%?
Yeah.
Guys, you're answering the questions for me. The next question was, how can being accessible open up your business to new markets?
Oh my gosh, I have so many thoughts on that. But by being accessible to one group, I have a rule in graduate school. I had a rule called, and my advisor very kindly and playfully named it Hobie's rule. And that's the rule that if we're going to make something accessible to me, and we're going to change the way we do research, we're going to also make sure that that is making work easier and better for everyone, for a much larger group. So my example is when I would sit in classes right up front and kind of be the annoying student, raising my hand whenever the professor didn't say what they were writing on the board and saying, hey, what was that? That actually helped. We heard on evaluations time and time again, that helped the rest of the students. And let me just give an example that is a really just a simple one, but very telling. We all have experienced wheelchair ramps or curb cuts, as they're sometimes called. In the 1960s, Ed Roberts, who was a man in a wheelchair, very dedicated to disability rights, was a student at the University of California, Berkeley. And he and a few other friends in wheelchairs would go, they called themselves the Rolling Squad, and they would roll down to City Hall every week and talk to the mayor and say, Mr. Mayor, we are really struggling because we have to sit on the curb and wait for someone to help us cross the street by lowering us slowly down, and vice versa when we want to get back up on the sidewalk. It would be really helpful if we had ramps at each corner of intersections. Can we please do this, at least in the town of Berkeley? And the mayor, heard them and thought about it and would always tell them, there's just not enough of you to make this worth it. This is a several $1 million expense. This was the 1960s. There just aren't enough of you. And with enough advocating and discussing and explaining the importance and the merits and how many other people would get assistance with wheelchair ramps, Berkeley went ahead and installed them. And the success of them was mind-boggling. Everybody was using them. They soon became a law in California. And then in 1990 were signed into law in the United States of America under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And let's just take a step back and think about how many of us who are not in wheelchairs use wheelchair ramps on a daily basis. Whether you're I don't know what they did with baby strollers before they had wheelchair ramps. That's a little scary. Toss it down in the street or something. If you're riding your bike, if you're pushing a cart or trolley with groceries, on roller skates, wheeling a roller bag. I read a study that said that 1 to 1.5% of the total population who use wheelchair ramps on a daily basis are actually in wheelchairs. So let's extrapolate this example and project it on the framework of accessible websites and think about how many people, we don't even know how many people we're helping when we make a website accessible. Just imagine that. Whenever you wonder if this is really an important thing to do, think about the story I just told you about the wheelchair ramp or the curb cut, and think about how whenever I do anything, in graduate school, I used a 3D printer to print molecules that my students could see on the graphical user interface in front of them. What's funny about that is that we found so many of my sighted peers wanted their stuff printed so they could hold it in their hands and manipulate it and understand it. That one modification, that one sort of different way of doing things helped my entire research group be better at what they do. So if you think you're just helping one group by making a website accessible, it's probably couldn't honestly be further from the truth. We're helping everybody with every improvement that we make to our business and to what we do for our clients.
I agree. And I want to point out somebody, George O'Brien, just wrote in the chat, he just broke his ankle and he's on crutches, and ramps are very helpful. And this is
There it
really,
is.
really important. And so, George, thank you for sharing. And I want to point out this is actually something that comes up sometimes, that there are permanent disabilities and temporary disabilities. And most of us at some point will experience a temporary disability. So it's something to take into account that while you may not need specific help now, you may need it in the future. And so it's
Well,
always good to support that.
And the other aspect of that, though, which is just as relevant, is disability as a concept is not a stranger, nor is it relevant to one group of people. It can happen and does occur with anyone at any time. So
it's
you
the
don't
one
know.
minority group that any one of us can join when we're least
Right.
expecting it.
And
Yeah.
that's a major issue. And look, lest you believe how much better things are today, they're not all that much better. Let me give you a real quick example. In 2004, when Senator Kerry was running for president of the United States, in San Rafael, California, near San Francisco, they opened a Kerry for President office in July of 2004. A couple of people in wheelchairs went down to the office because they wanted to go in and talk with people. And also there was a party, an opening party that was scheduled for middle of July. Turns out that the building was on the second floor and there wasn't a single way for anyone in a wheelchair to go up the stairs, of course, to get to the party. No elevators or anything. And so they complained, it reached the news, and the Kerry people said, well, we're going to take care of that. We know we have to do it. We just couldn't do it in time. And so the people in the wheelchairs said exactly the right thing. So what you're saying is you really don't want to invite us to the party. Attitudes haven't changed all that much. accessiBe and all of you are really making a major difference just by virtue of how you're helping to make the internet accessible. And that will continue, but it's not easy. It's not going to stop after just a few websites. But the reality is we can do it, and we will all do it together.
Awesome, Mike. Thank you. So, Jack, thank you for your input here, because we're actually going to skip ahead to that question. You make a very good point. Jack says, most of the people on this webinar understand the need for the product. What he needs is a way to convince others. He's run into brick walls every place he goes. So, Hobie, how do you, as an agency owner, right? How do you tend to sell accessiBe? What are some of the most impactful selling tactics that you use to sell accessibility to your clients as an agency?
I'll give you a few of them. I must be honest that I use myself a lot. I say, man, I love what you do, and I'd sure love to be able to use your website. Let's make it accessible. The way that I talk to people the most is I say, like, if you're a small company, if you're a restaurant, a neighborhood restaurant, I want to be able to sit at your restaurant and read the menu, not in paper. I want to be able to read it on my phone or on my Braille note taker or whatever the case may be. For a very small fee, we can make your website accessible and drive so many more people that you don't even know exist to your website. And I use that tactic all the time before I start talking about lawsuits. But there is a very real aspect of accessibility, which is that accessible websites are considered places of business now and do need to be made accessible. I do not like to tell people, to scare them into accessibility, because accessibility is so much more than that. But you can use the argument of, hey, wouldn't it be nice to not have to worry and look over your shoulder all the time? Wouldn't it be nice to just know that your website was accessible with our platform that stands up in the court of law? The other reason and the other tactic that I use a lot is, okay, I build you a website. We make sure that when we hand it off to you, it's usable to me and it's accessible. It follows the WCAG guidelines. Let's say you add a photo, you're doing an event and you add a photo and or your associate adds a photo and you guys don't remember to put an alt tag on it and describe it. accessiBe will automate that, but it will also inform you in a very clear and easy to understand way which alt tags it's just added, and you have the option to change them and customize them and do whatever it is you want to do and you need to do to continue the upkeep very easily, very self-explanatorily, the upkeep of your website. And those are the arguments that I use. It's if people don't get it, they don't get it. It's one of those things where I think that we can, I explain it, I explain the importance of it, and you just need to let people do what they will do. But
For sure. No, I think,
is
and not to
also
cut you
really
off
tough.
there.
It is also really tough to fight against the argument. Wouldn't you like to increase your business by as much as 20%?
Oh yeah. Hey,
Yeah.
listen, as the owner of a failed e-commerce store, I can also tell you, if you want to sell stuff online, you got to make it as easy as humanly possible for people to buy
Yeah.
stuff from you. And accessiBe helps everybody with that, just like y'all said. Now,
Hey,
two
my
things.
e-commerce store that's launching next week has accessiBe on it, and it's 100% navigable.
There we go. So two things on that, Hobie, because one of the things you mentioned is that, there is a legal liability.
Yeah.
I'll mention briefly that AODA in Canada and Ontario is coming into effect June 30th in 6 days, less than a week. So definitely check that out. It is unquestionably the law in the US, and there is absolutely a legal issue. I'll tell a very, very brief story, and then I have another question for you, Hobie. The last time I left my zip code with this wonderful Corona time we're all living through was last February. I was in Vegas giving a talk about accessibility, and a man interrupted me halfway through my presentation claiming to own 60 locations of a payday loan company. Now, payday loans are worse than the mob in some ways, because I don't understand how 3,000% interest is legal in America, but that's a separate issue. He said he got a demand letter for $10,000 and called his lawyer. And the lawyer explained that it's a strict liability law, and he can choose either pay him 150 grand in legal fees over 2 years and still lose the case, or pay the 10 grand and get the rest of the websites accessible. So he said, okay, fine, wrote a check and started looking into accessibility. But the day the check cleared, he got 59 more demand letters and ended up having to settle for $600,000. And this kind of thing does happen all the time, because many times the attorneys sending out these letters are looking for settlements. So it is a really important thing to be aware of and to let your clients know about, because while we don't want to, sell through fear, we also have a responsibility, like you said, as agency owners, to make sure that they're aware of the risks. Now, Hobie, there have been a lot of naysayers out there. And one of the questions that was asked in this chat was, how are a lot of people are mentioning accessibility directly as being an issue, saying it's not accessible to blind users, and it leaves them confused on what's the best approach to take. So what do you say to the naysayers that say accessibility is just a Band-Aid or doesn't solve the real problem?
I say a lot.
I know, that's why
I'll keep it brief here. Look, there's a lot of chatter in the community about how accessibility makes people complacent and doesn't really solve the accessibility problem. And there are a lot of ways people can pick stuff apart, right? You can pick anything apart. Here's what I tell those people. Let's think back. A dear friend of mine is a woman by the name of Lisa Kipps Brown. Her father was blind, and she has been a web developer since the late 1990s. And she built websites, opening up a software, just a text editor, a document using Nano or Pico or any of the text editors, and she would just write code. When the WYSIWYG editors came out in the early 2000s, a lot of her colleagues said, oh, these are not pure, these are not natural. We can't use an automated tool to make web pages accessible, or to build websites, pardon me. And she adopted them right away and became busier than a lot of her colleagues, because she was using the technology at hand and not complaining about the fact that this is automated, this isn't right. And my only point here is to say that I think this is a very similar parallel, where accessibility is an automated solution to a growing problem, and a very easy way to make something accessible without years of expertise and, frankly, thousands of dollars a year of retainer for the agency that works with you on your website and your web work. The other thing I would say is that, and this is a very big deal, when we build websites to be accessible and we manually maintain them, if someone finds a bug and points it out to us, we go and we fix it on that website. Great. that one website for a winery, for a school, for a government, whatever, that one thing is fixed. Okay, great. With accessiBe, if someone finds a bug and it's fixed in the the hierarchy of the software, and it's auto updated on over 150,000 websites, now you fix the problem for 150,000 people, not just one. So it's a much easier way for the community to take a grassroots effort and make websites far more accessible one at a time. And honestly, if the people who say that accessiBe is a band-aid had a solution that was as affordable as accessiBe, I would be fine with that. I would understand. I would listen. The problem is that, and I believe there is a technology for every client, right? There is a solution for every client. And certain people love it, love doing web development work on their own and maintaining their website on their own for a lot of money. Some, frankly, can't afford to do it. And accessiBe is exactly the right solution for clients that don't have tens and dozens of thousands of dollar budgets a year for their websites.
Absolutely.
If I can just add to that, there's
please.
So I specifically can give you an example of somebody who emailed me about 5 weeks ago and said, I've been trying to use a website. I'm blind. It was actually somebody who I knew. And this person said, I can't do some things on this website. Ironically, she said, if I turn accessiBe off, I can kind of do the things that I want to do, but with accessiBe on, I can't. There's a problem. accessiBe looked at it. Actually, Shure Eckerling, our founder, looked at it and he said, yeah, I see the problem. It's an easy fix. It was fixed a couple of weeks ago, and it is something that will affect other websites. And the issue with what the naysayers, all the people who are out there criticizing accessiBe and what they're doing, the issue that really they never address is, okay, how are you going to have a solution to the fact that we have over 380 websites a minute in the United States being created, and less than 2% of those websites are actually made with accessibility as part of what they do? That's a huge number. The gap grows larger every day. And you need a scalable solution to address that issue, which is what accessiBe provides. And we can do that, and none of the manual coding systems can even begin to address that issue. And again, if you make a change on your website, as Hobie alluded to earlier, if that change then creates some sort of inaccessibility, or you add an image and you don't have a description of that image because you manually coded your site or somebody did it for you, you have a couple options. You can get the image addressed with alt tags by hiring someone to do it and keeping them on retainer. You can choose not to do anything, which means your website won't be accessible, or you can use accessiBe, and it keeps up with that. And the neat thing about accessiBe, as Hobie also said earlier, is maybe the image won't be described as well as it should be. So you can go in and accessiBe will help with that and address that and make the image totally described in the way that you, the website owner, wants.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think there's so many reasons that, people want to attack us, and people want to say, oh, you're not doing enough. And you can always do more. This is not the final product. We are always improving accessiBe, like Hobie said. And when we make a change, when we make an improvement, we make it for literally 150,000, close to 200,000 websites. And the scalability of the solution is super, super important, because we have something called the web accessibility gap, that there are tons and tons of websites being created, most of them being created with CMSs that don't give you the ability to make an accessible website. I have a partner that actually went to the extent of, and they have thousands of websites, they went to the extent of building their own custom CMS that prevented a user or a website owner from uploading images without alt text so that it would be accessible. And they still had to buy accessiBe for all of their customers, because there are so many little accessibility issues that they need help with. So definitely all of those points are very valid. Now, a couple more questions for you, Hobie. One thing I wanted to talk about was SMB customers that have small websites that
Yeah.
they feel like $500 a year is still an expensive proposition. How do you approach something like that?
Man, I explain what the alternative is. The alternatives are either an inaccessible website or paying a company like mine a few $100s a month to maintain your accessibility as you're changing things and adjusting things. So it's pretty simple. If you want accessibility, and I can show you why accessibility is important to you, that $500 a year shouldn't. It becomes less of an issue. Really becomes less of a less of a problem, less of an issue. Um, if we can get them over the hump of understanding the need and the importance for accessibility.
And
Gotcha.
also not a scare tactic, but it is violating the law not to make websites accessible today.
Right.
And the result is that we should do it because it's the right thing to do, not because you're going to get sued. But it is a violation of the law in the United States and a number of other countries if you don't make your website accessible. Remember how accessiBe was founded. 3 people in Israel had a company that made websites for people in 2015. In 2017,
It was an agency like all our partners.
that's right. In 2017, there was a law passed in Israel that mandated accessibility. And these 3 people started wondering, how are we going to get all of our websites accessible? All the websites that we've created, we've got to make them accessible. That was way too many to do with manual coding, and accessiBe was born. So Sure Eckerling and Gal Wiesel and Deckel Skoo did that, and accessiBe was born. Very creative, but they did it because it was the right thing to do. And yes, there was a law, but it does need to be done.
Right. And as a quick tagline there, if you think $500 is expensive, how do you feel about 10,000 for a demand letter, right?
Yeah,
Again, not to scare people, but that is a good line you can use. Now, Mike, one of the
absolutely.
things you said is, we did something not just because it's business smart, but because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Another thing that we did was we created accessFind. Hobie, can you talk a little bit about how word spreads about accessible websites, and also
Oh,
talk a little bit about accessFind, because I'm pretty excited about it, if I'll
well,
tell you.
I'm a proud founding member of accessFind. There are little things there's little more that I would be proud of than that, because that's such a necessary and important and timely service. How do we find accessible websites? Gosh, before accessFind, it was through what I call the blind vine or the disability vine, where someone would say, hey, you should check out this company. They have an accessible app or they have an accessible website. And that goes a long way, by the way. But there has never been a place where we could go, like if we could have a search engine on Google or any of these where you search for a term and you only get accessible results, that'd be amazing. The amount of hours I've spent over the past years, and I'm sure Mike would agree with me, looking through garbage that isn't accessible and trying to find the stuff that actually is accessible, it's a lot of wasted time. So accessFind is a search engine for accessible websites only. We will only feature websites on accessFind that are accessible and usable and user-friendly. And you know what? We don't care how those websites become accessible. If you want to use a coding department at an agency, that's totally fine. If you want to use accessiBe, that's fine too. Do whatever makes the most sense to you. All we care about is that you want to and are excited to make your website accessible and make the world a better place. And literally, we want to put together a spot where we can go and search for a website that's going to be accessible, not just to blind people, not just to people with epilepsy, but all people, because we are inclusive. And this is the most inclusive thing I've seen in so many years from a digital standpoint.
Yeah, it's
So once
super exciting.
accessFind goes totally online, if you know of a website that is accessible, again, whether it's through accessiBe or not, you can search accessFind, and if it's not there, you can email, or through the database search engine, you will have the ability to contact accessFind and say this website should be included. And the best thing to do is to use something like accessiBe's ACE audit tool. ACE is better than a lot of the tools because it tends to be easy to understand. But if you demonstrate that the website has accessibility included in it, even if it's not perfect, but if there has been a major attempt to make a website accessible, then accessFind is a place where that site can be registered and people can use it. And accessiBe, or actually accessFind, will also tell the website owner of any improvements that need to be made. And if a website goes out of accessFind will also say, people are complaining because they can't use your website. There are things that need to be fixed, so that the website owner can address them. So it's an ongoing moving target, if you will, in terms of sites continuing to remain accessible. There's no charge for it today. I don't know whether that will ever change, but it is free. And it's for, as Hobie said, all accessible websites, period.
Yeah. And of course, every accessiBe client and partner's website will automatically be on accessFind. So
You know it.
yeah, and so that's just extra exposure for you right there. And one thing that I'll touch on that I guess you guys, because you have so many good points, but I'll add just one, is that I spoke to somebody recently and they mentioned that because they can only use accessible websites, they can't choose a service provider for a plumber or a HVAC technician based on rating, based on how great they are. They just have to pick the one that's accessible to them.
Yeah.
And that's a major problem. Like, you don't want to end up with a bad repair person. You need the best in the biz. So,
And by the way, I don't know, if you're a plumber and you're building your own business, you want to have a website that's functional, but I don't think you want to be paying thousands of dollars a year to make it accessible. Pay
course.
$500 and we've got it handled.
But also with accessFind, there'll be a lot of different filters available. So you'll be able to see ratings. You'll be able to see people's comments. But the key is, without even asking, the websites will all need to be accessible to be on accessFind. So you've got a website on accessFind, it's accessible because it's there. And all the other stuff you'll be able to search on as well, so that you can get the best solution in your area. And
sure.
Again, that's a wonderful service sponsored by accessiBe, but accessFind is not just for accessiBe websites, it's for all websites. But on the other hand, we love to get accessiBe websites. So you guys have lots to be able to sell as partners and lots to be able to talk about.
Of course. So let's debunk a couple of the myths of accessibility. So one, a lot of people feel like they think they've been told only companies over 15 employees need to make their websites accessible. Do either of you guys want to address that one?
Not true.
I don't know where that
Okay,
came
that's
from.
that. That was
Not
that was
true.
quick.
It's simple. If
I
you
haven't
have a
even heard
website,
that.
I've never
That's
heard that
very
either.
silly.
It's interesting. If you have a website, it is supposed to be accessible.
Yep.
Yes, so that's actually, to my understanding, that's ADA Title I, and that refers to whether you need to accommodate employees of yours with disabilities, but it does not matter if you're dealing with the public. So as an example,
Correct.
if you have a restaurant, you only have 5 employees, it doesn't mean that you don't need to have an accessible restroom or entrance or any of that. You still need to
Same
address the
thing with the
public.
website.
Exactly.
My company currently has 2 employees, my e-commerce company. And guess what? It would be really silly of us not to have an accessible website.
100%. Now,
And it would
another-
also be wrong not to. So,
oh, of course. And another
They're
one,
wrong and silly. Yep.
what if you're not selling products on your website? Can you still get sued?
sure, it's still
Just like a public space.
It's a public space. If you have a website, you have it up there because you want the public to be able to get something out of it. You're putting it online because you want something, and you want people, for whatever reason, to be able to interact with that website. If you are leaving out 20% of people anywhere in the world because you don't make your website accessible, then that is a problem for you, and you need to address it. Doesn't matter whether you're selling, whether it's educational. Look, in 2007, Apple was about to be sued because they would not make iTunes U accessible. That wasn't selling. That's where professors put up information and lectures and so on. And a lot of other data went up there, and it wasn't accessible. Another lawsuit got settled in 2007, actually with Target.com, because they wouldn't make their website accessible. That lawsuit got settled. Apple heard about it, and they went to the people who were creating the lawsuit against them. And I know about it because I was one of the plaintiffs in that suit. And they said, we'll fix it. And they did, because it was the right thing to do. And yeah, they were going to get threatened with a lawsuit, but they did it, and they have maintained accessibility. It has nothing to do with selling products.
So last question, and then I think we're gonna ask Mike to explain some other stuff. Why do you choose to partner with accessiBe specifically? Why us? Like, I work here. I think we're great, but why do you think
your tool works? And your tool it is everything. You know, when I go to websites that accessiBe is on, I can navigate them. And you know, for me, it's about that, but it's also about the people. You guys are awesome people, and you deliver what you promise, and you are really just a good company to work with. But honestly, even the most important reason why accessiBe is that it works. And when I go to your websites, I know I've got access, and I know what I'm going to find. It's consistent, and that makes a huge difference. One of the biggest aspects of accessibility that isn't, you know, that's so frustrating in terms of inaccessible websites, a lot of times they're inaccessible mainly because they're inconsistent. accessiBe does an amazing job of making things consistent. And I want to say, just as I know Michael's going to talk to us about a few things, but in closing out my part, I am very easy to get a hold of. Hobie, H-O-B-Y, at Hobie Wedler, that's W-E-D like David, L-E-R.com. If any of you reach out to me, and I believe in accessibility so much that if you ever need me to get on a call with you and a client and explain why it's important to be accessible, I'll do that pro bono. And I'm saying that publicly.
Wow. You're about to get a whole lot of emails, Hobie. So Mike, before you jump in, there's one other thing, because Jack actually asked a really important question. How do I address lawsuits against accessiBe? And there have been a bunch of times that accessiBe was quoted in lawsuits. And one thing that I want to remind everybody is that the American legal system works perfectly all the time for everybody. So it lets anybody who wants file a lawsuit against anybody that they want for any reason, even if they don't have grounds. There have been several cases where accessiBe licensees have gotten demand letters. There have been cases where people got sued and then installed accessiBe to solve the problem. But what I will tell you straight up here, and of course, Hobie, you're welcome to jump in as well, we've never had a client successfully sued after installing the tool. And that's really important. One of the things that we provide as included in the cost of every license we sell, and I know a lot of people say that and there's hidden costs, and in this case, there really are not, as our partners know. We offer a litigation support package. In the event you get a demand letter, a lawsuit, a complaint, whatever, let us know immediately. We're going to do an audit of that complaint. We're going to find the issue, and we're going to point out how it's either not a real issue or we're going to address it. We're going to provide you with an explanation of every part of how our accessibility works. We're going to provide you with a failures request master so they can submit more complaints and we can address those. And we're going to give you a form letter. We've handled literally 5,000 of these for our partners and customers, and we've never had a client successfully sued after installing the tool.
And accessiBe doesn't get sued because they're on a site. Some people have said, well, they have, but they haven't, because accessiBe does work. Excuse me, hashtag accessiBe works. But the bottom line is that it is a product, as Hobie said, that works. I know that he may still do it. Sheer Eckerling spends a lot of his Sundays just reviewing complaints that have been sent to us at accessiBe saying, someone is threatening to sue me. Can you help? Or I have put accessiBe on my site. They still haven't released the demand. Can you help? And he spends his Sundays looking at the demands and doing exactly what Rafi just talked about, which is creating the demand package, the package that we use to help people address the issue. We know what goes on. And the reality is that accessiBe will help you and will stand behind the fact that you have accessiBe on your website and help you with lawsuits. And there isn't an additional charge for that.
Right. And I'll tell you something, you can imagine all of that effort is not exactly inexpensive, but it's something that we really care about because we believe there's no question people deserve access to websites. There's no question. But in my mind, at least, a lot of times these lawsuits can cause more animosity towards people with disabilities than resulting in actual accessibility. So, Mike, if you want to take over, I apologize to anybody who asked other questions. If you want to reach out to us directly, we'll be very, very happy to answer them. But unfortunately, we're coming up on our timing here.
Yeah.
So, Michael, if you want to speak a little bit about the vision we have for the internet and how our partners are such a vital part of this vision, we'd really appreciate it.
First of all, I'd like to say again, as Hobie did, I am also available to get on any calls with you anytime, you and your customers. If you have a customer that needs somebody to talk with them to help motivate them and help them understand more about disabilities, if I can help you train customers, reach out. I have put all of my contact information in the chat room, so you're welcome to reach out. I will respond. My phone number is there also, and you are welcome to call. And if you're across the world, you may not get a response back until the next day if I'm sleeping, but I will respond to any of you who have any issues, any questions, even after this webinar. If any of you have questions, email me. We will get you answers if I don't know them. We have a vision in accessiBe to make the entire internet totally inclusive and accessible by 2025. It's really that simple. What we do that is not done elsewhere is provide a scalable solution. We've talked in so many ways about that during this webinar. The very fact that it is so inexpensive to put accessiBe on a website, no matter how many pages, and the fact that it then creates so much accessibility, and that accessiBe also recognizes that the things that it may not be able to remediate, we have services for. We're also creating additional aspects of the accessiBe team that will be able to help with manual remediation where something doesn't work, so you won't have to go off and search for people. And I'm sure that the pricing, when that actually happens, will be a whole lot less expensive with accessiBe than elsewhere because it's part of what we do. We really want to make the entire internet inclusive and available to everyone. And we, even more important, want you to be a part of that. We are excited, I continue to say, that all of you are here, and we want to do anything that we need to do to support you and help you make the process work. So you need to simply tell us what you require and how we can help. Something that I've been doing is setting up a process to train people inside of accessiBe more about disabilities and so on. I'm glad to do that with any or all of you. Also, we're going to be offering a service because, as I said, I've been a speaker for 20 years talking about the World Trade Center and such, and have traveled the world giving speeches, talking about inclusion. I have a speech I love to give called Moving from Diversity to Inclusion, because I don't think that diversity works anymore. If you watch all of the political campaigns from last year, if you watch what goes on in the media about Hollywood here in the States or elsewhere, they talk about being diverse, but they don't talk about disabilities. They don't talk about inclusion. And if you need someone, or you know of somebody who needs a speaker to come and just even motivate, but gives me the opportunity to talk about accessiBe and internet access as well, I'll come and do it. Or if you want me to just do it virtually, we'll do it. That's part of my role at accessiBe, is to help you and enhance whatever you need done. So feel free to call on us. I know that time is growing. Whoops, I'm sorry. I know that time is growing short. I'm glad to stay afterward if there are more questions, if Rafi wants to do that as well, but we'll leave that to you guys to decide.
Yeah, I don't have a life. I actually don't. That wasn't sarcasm. So
Well, you're in Michigan. What can I say? That'll explain it. But
Oh,
well, so the last thing I'll say here is just so everybody knows, we have our partner success department. We are expanding. We are growing the partner success department. Some of you will get to meet our close friend Hans. He's joining the department very soon. We're going to be very excited to have him. And we're going to continue growing because everybody needs to have this personal attention and support. You can always feel free to reach out to us, to me, and we'll be happy to help you with anything that you need. And we look forward to talking to you because I see so many of the partners that I already work with in this webinar. It's great to see all of you. I wish that I could address everybody by name, but we'd be here for another 20 minutes probably. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here. And
thanks, guys.
I think that's about it.
but if people have more questions, we'll answer them. We'll stay here as long as you want.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you guys so much. It's really an honor to work with you, Mike. It's really an honor to work with you, Rafi, and to everybody else at the accessiBe team. I'm excited for the future.
We are too.
accessiBe really is a team. One of the reasons I joined is that I am so impressed with the commitment, the dedication, and the closeness of the whole team. I've yet to go to Israel where accessiBe was designed and where the founders live. I'm looking forward to doing that, but we interact every day. Zoom is a wonderful thing. And I want to be able to do that with all of you. So I'm looking forward to getting to know you as we move forward.
I'm going to put my contact info in the chat.
So it looks like some of the panelists can't see the chat, and we're going to send it to them.
Oh,
go ahead.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will just add, we need to finish. I will just add that we will share the webinar recording at the beginning of next week together with the contact information of Hobby and Michael. So don't
Thank you,
worry.
guys.
But very quickly, if people want
the recording and the contact information.
Very quickly,
Thank
if anyone wishes to reach out.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Michael,
guys.
you
I appreciate
muted
it.
yourself.
If anybody wishes to reach out, my email is Michael H.I. Michael H.I. at accessiBe.com. If you weren't able to see the chat, Michael H.I. at accessiBe.com. And we can set up a Zoom conversation. We can talk on the phone or whatever you'd like. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Yep. And thank you all. We need to kind of finish the webinar now. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you all.
Awesome. You're all great partners of us, and we really appreciate that you're here. And thank you, of course, Michael and Hobby, and of course, our amazing Rafi. Thank you for
and thank you,
hosting.
Jan, for
Very, very
coordinating
happy to be
this.
here.
And it's been a great honor to be here and to meet all of you. And it's our pleasure. We're looking forward to doing more of this.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you all.
Same here. And remember, if you have questions still, you can always feel free to send them. We'll answer them directly. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.